Hi, guys. This is Dr. Saxon. I just wanted to take a few minutes and go over the way we handle bullying here at Horbelt because we found it to be quite effective in reducing the amount of time we spend as a school on dealing with the bullying issues. It's not that we don't see bullying as important, but we saw a couple years ago that every time something happened between students, parents would call and say, "My son's being bullied," or a teacher would report to the office and say, "So and so in the classroom is being bullied." And the concern that we had was that once something is reported as bullying, it kind of locks us into a way of handling something which doesn't give us much room. So, what we wanted to do is to try and find a way to get the train off the track and begin redirecting it before we got locked into a situation where we didn't have any options. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of the things that happen aren't really bullying. Okay. And we need to teach our kids how to handle conflict successfully without just hollering wolf every time something happens. We know when we're dealing with kids in school that not every kid has the same experience. They don't have the same family background. They don't have the same economic background or benefits. They don't have the same family configuration. But we know that deep down within every kid wants to be loved, accepted, affirmed, and challenged. And that's one of the things that we want to do here in multiple venues at the new 5-6 Horbelt School. A few years ago, I began asking both the staff and the students to take a look at the numbers here as I called them out to raise their hands if they thought this was accurate. And I'd say to them, how many of you think that 85% of the reported cases of bullying turn out to be bullying? And most of the kids raised their hands. And then I'd go through and say the same thing for 10% and 5%. Imagine their shock when they were told that the actual number of bullying cases that end up being bullying from the ones that are reported is only 5%. So I said to them that this tells you that we have this mindset in our culture which tells us that every time a conflict happens, it has to be bullying, when the truth of the matter is that many of the conflicts that happen between kids are part of the normal process of growing up. So, our job is to teach you how to take and recognize what's going on and then have meaningful support so that while you are learning how to identify what's really bullying, what's not, you can have an adult give you feedback and help you develop resiliency to handle the conflicts that come your way. And so what we did was we began teaching our students and our teachers when there was an issue between children to say, I'm having a conflict with, or John is having a conflict with Sally. And then we'd have the counselor or an administrator work with the student because we would be able to take and have the tools to take a look at what was occurring and see if the students really were being bullied or whether there was a social emotional issue where they needed to be given some options and strategies on how to go back and handle what was occurring. I also provided our school with this short general rule of thumb. And I would say to them that, you know what, in life, we're going to find people that are rude. And rude people are going to say or do something unintentionally hurtful, and they do it once. We've all experienced a rude person. We're also going to encounter mean people. And mean people say or do something intentionally hurtful, and they do it once, and that's mean. We know that. Okay, so we have rude people, we have mean people. But then we have people who might say or do something intentionally hurtful. They keep on doing it, even when you tell them to stop. And that's when we begin taking a look at whether or not that thing is bullying. The thing that is hard for people to understand is that the concept of bullying, as defined by the state, has to have very specific characteristics. It has to meet all of this criteria. And a lot of times, when you take and apply these to a circumstance that occurs, we find out that that circumstance really is not bullying at all. One of the things that we discovered in school is oftentimes what makes something bullying is there is an imbalance of power in relationships, and a student is using his personal strength or gathering others around to personally and purposefully insult, shame, or hurt somebody else. Take a few minutes, stop the thing, and just look at this criteria again, and make sure you know what this criteria is to identify bullying as per state law in New Jersey. This is one of the things that we look at when something comes our way with regard to whether or not something is bullying. Bullying is not a normal childhood activity. I don't want you to mistake that in any way, shape, or means based on what I'm saying. It's not a rite of passage. It's not the victim's fault, although sometimes the victim does provoke, okay? But it is a hostility that is based on intimidation. It's a imbalance of power or a purposeful working to humiliate, embarrass, or threaten or shame somebody else. And it always focuses where there's one weaker person being threatened by somebody who has more strength for whatever reason. We also worked really hard to help our students understand the difference between conflict and bullying. A lot of this differentiation occurred where we had friends who had conflicts, and then something happened. One got mad at the other, and they went home and told their mom or dad that they were being bullied. And really and truly, what happened was there was a conflict that was occurring. So, what we did was brought our kids down, because we took out this piece where we allowed someone besides us to label the actions as bullying. We were able to work with the kids and say, no, this is conflict. Were you guys friends? No, work it out. Okay. Nobody's trying to take. Do you see how that person feels bad for what they're doing? Okay. So how do we take and manage that? Okay. And if it was bullying, then we're able to go and take a look at these things and say, yep, that's exactly why. Some people thought that peer mediation was a way of helping bullying and reducing it. And on my own personal experience, after doing peer mediation and then looking at the research, this is not true whatsoever. Peer mediation does not work because often the bully is somebody that has to take and be adjusted attitudinally by somebody with more power to take and step in and make sure that that bullying does not occur again. Bullying can be direct. If you take a look at these, you can see some of the ways that, in terms of direct actions, verbal bullying occurs, psychological bullying occurs, and physical bullying occurs. This one right here with the psychological is usually the one that we see happening more with the feminine gender, especially with the rolling eyes, right, ladies? The dirty looks. Okay, we see the girls do that all the time. Okay, it's something that when you're trying to cut down these bullying behaviors, you have to make sure you talk to the girls about the way they do these things. I've also seen hair flips, body gestures, okay, motions. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. It could also be indirect, where it occurs behind somebody's back. And take a look at these things, okay, where these actions can be done when somebody's not there, and somebody creates a bullying circumstance based on these kinds of things. As adults, one of the things that we want to do is to teach our kids when something happens and when we encounter something to make sure that we respond versus react. When we respond to something, let me back up. When we react to something, what happens is that we often jump into something in the moment when we're overly emotional, when we think we have a cause that we have to fix. We haven't taken the time to go back and examine the circumstance. I always use the phrase of getting more information when something happens to make sure that we're covering everything thoroughly. When I talk about responding, what I mean is that from every circumstance that occurs, we take a step back, and rather than rushing in, we look at what happened, we gather information, we ask thoughtful questions, we give the circumstance a moment to cool down, and then we provide a response to that, which is educative and also provides a way for the kids to learn how to take and embrace some actions where they can avoid this kind of circumstance in the future. You're going to see too this year that one of the things that we work on, you've already heard about this, is some of the social emotional learning skills. And as we build on this year, you're going to see that these social emotional skills are built around these five major components. So there's a lot of educational and research material out there on social emotional learning. These five things that we want to talk about have to do with self awareness, management, social awareness, relational skills, and responsible decision making. For those of you who did the listen to the video, "The Leader in Me," that's directly related to this idea of these categories of social emotional learning and how we can take our kids to be more responsible by taking actions for their lives that help them manage the things that they find themselves in. The bottom line is that when we approach all of these circumstances that occur, we want our kids to pick up the same thing that we do, that we're all working from a growth mindset, which means that something may happen and we do something wrong because we don't know better, but then we teach and then we learn and then we try to do better next time. We are not perfect as human beings, and neither are our kids. So, what we need to do is that when something happens, provide them with the next step, encourage them, support them, hold them accountable, and then teach them how to manage themselves so that they can learn how to trust their own decision making and learn how to grow when things happen to them that they don't know how to handle with their first experience. You know, of course, in terms of the thing, if you have a suspected case of bullying, that there is a reporting procedure and a timeline that if you are aware of something, that verbal report comes to the principal or a designee the same day of the incident. There's a written form that has to be filled out within 2 days. And then what happens is that we work on investigating and fulfilling the responsibilities that we need to do within the 10 days. So more will be coming to you on this when we give Dana Hermani a chance to share some of how she's going to be handling that as the HIB hub person for the school district. The other thing is that when we deal with parents and with people, somehow they have this notion that if a child is labeled as a bullying or it's a bullying circumstance, that there's going to be more severe consequences that are occurred. I can't tell you the number of times that parents have fought with me because I said, no, that's not bullying. And they said, oh, yes, it is. And whether it was bullying or not, there's going to still be things that went into it in determining how a consequence that was appropriate was handled. And there are components that come from the law that fall into these four major categories. The student consideration, how hard the student's been working, whether they've been really trying, if they're friends. School considerations, how they've been working in school, okay, how they've been dealing with handling their peer relationships, any personal things that might be going on, any environmental things that might be going on, like their home life, okay, their life in a classroom, et cetera, et cetera. And examples of consequences can be anything from a verbal warning based on the severity of whatever we see might be bullying, all the way down to reports to law enforcement. Okay, we have done all of these along the way. We always go back first to the first part where we try to teach the kids how to manage conflict among each other, okay, and between each other, so that they develop the skill set to avoid this kind of behavior in the future. Our goal at Horbelt is to prevent bullying by happening by focusing on the climate and culture of our school. You've already seen some aspects of that by the book study we did and my invitation to have you read it, Teach Like a Pirate, The Leader in Me, and then to see the fish philosophy video as a start. To begin giving the staff and students keys and common language to use together as we're on this journey, and then to emphasize the growth mindset to avoid labeling. That's one of my pet peeves. I hate when kids are labeled because sometimes it puts them into a channel where they can't get out and they get stuck there for the rest of their school career. We're going to really work hard on avoiding that here at our school and deal with what kids do rather than giving kids a label and defining that in terms of who they are. That's all I got. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you found this helpful. And of course, if you get to the end, you can get 1 PD credit by doing this before school starts by sending me an email and giving something that provoked a thought in you, okay? Have a great day and looking forward to talking to you soon again. Bye.